Couple corrections to start off today. Last week I said I was 13 when I started as a river guide. I was 14. And also, the catchphrase was not sandwiches, beer, and wine. It was, okay, we got beer, we got wine, we got sandwiches. I guess we're ready to go. A lot funnier, right? The fact that the sandwiches are at the end totally blew that joke. I apologize for blowing the joke and for messing up the catchphrase. But now you got it. This week, welcome to job number 4, printer. I bet you were not expecting that. And as I went through this list, I was like, wow, I forgot about that. Before I go into, this has a long story. Oh man. I start a sentence, then I stop, and then I start. My journey, I'll get there. I will get there. The story of my becoming a printer starts with my mom, as most things do. Moms or scouting. You got moms or scouting. Either you take your pick. My mom was an inventor. She liked to invent things. The first thing she invented was a collapsible basket that would sit on a bench seat of a truck. So you could put all your junk in it, so it wouldn't slide onto the floor. So it would, and then it would collapse, so it wouldn't be in the way. She spent money getting that thing patented through the Raymond Lee organization, and we went to San Francisco, and it was the first time I'd been in a big high-rise. I was pretty young. I was 8 or 9, and it was pretty impressive. My mom's got this great invention, and we're getting a patent on it, and it turned out to be a big scam that we found out later watching 60 Minutes about this group that would get these patents and charge people like us a bunch of money, and nothing would ever happen with it. So we're watching 60 Minutes there, and they're talking about people who lost $3,000, and my mom's been back there just steaming. She goes, we lost $5,000. We should be on 60 Minutes. But that did not stop her from inventing. She could not stop inventing. Her next project was the family chronology file. That's right, the family chronology file. This was an invention that could only be conceived of by a mother of 7. Basically, it was an index card, a box of index cards that had all these important dates in it, like birthdays, anniversaries, immunizations, when people did this, when people did that. It was just this file, and you'd be like, wait, what was that thing? It was all the important information that you needed for your family in chronological order. Boom, right there. You could just look through it. And it was like a personal history kind of thing, and it was all these little files, and you would just, here's a thing, and you had a card with a subject. You would fill it out. Great idea if you're a mother of 7. My dad was always on board with my mom's inventions. He was just like, he just supported her 100%. So they take it to a printer, and they get a quote on how much it's going to cost to print it. And my dad's like, that's kind of expensive. I think we could buy a printing press for that and just print it ourselves. So that's what we did. My dad bought an A.B. Dick offset printer. Here's the manual. Here's some ink. He figured it out, and then he taught me how to print. He taught me how to print this offset printing. It was that same year where I was whitewater river rafting in the summer, printing during the school year. So I was about 14 years old, running the offset press. The offset press, it's a bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a dark art. The way it works is you would make these plates, an aluminum plate. You do all your paste up work, right? And when we talk about cut and paste on your computer, back in the day, we would actually cut with scissors and X-Acto knives, and then we would paste it onto a thing, and you would lay this thing out by hand, you'd make your picture, whatever it was, a flyer or chronology file. You know what, to this day, I can't remember what was on those cards, even though I printed all of them. I can't remember what any of them said. And then you would take a picture of it. We had this big camera in our old pantry. We converted our pantry and kitchen, and let's back that up. I got kind of lost there. The printing process, the way offset printing works is you take an image and you put it onto an aluminum. The way the offset printing works, do I really want to explain how offset printing works? You can just look it up. Just look it up. You're not going to look it up. You're not going to look it up. I had to look it up, even though I did it for a couple years. Basically what it is you take whatever you're printing and it goes onto an aluminum plate, and then that plate picks up ink, and then that ink puts it onto a rubber blanket, and that rubber gasket puts it onto the paper. Aluminum plate, rubber, paper, ink. Hasn't changed for a long time. It's a bit of a dark art though, because you have to get the water just right. If there's too much water, it gets kind of gray or kind of starts to get streaky, and then you have to get the ink right, and they have all these little buttons, these little, not buttons, but little dials, screws, so that you get the flow of ink just right. That's why if you go to a printing place and they say, oh, how much is it for 10? And they're like, it'll be $100. Well, how much is it for 1,000? It'll be $100, because to that first initial thing, it takes you a bunch. And then once you have it, you just put it on, it just goes, and next thing you know, you got 1,000, and it took an extra 10 minutes. All the time is in that setup. So I learned how to do all that stuff. I learned how to set up, take photographs of plates, layout, and I had this pen, and you would draw in this, like you say you're gonna write McDowell, and you would write M. McDowell. But then it would have all these scissor things, and it would come out and it would have this other pen over here, so you're writing with this pen, and this pen over here is actually doing it on a slant, or in a bigger font, or you would do small and it would be big, or you'd do big and it'd be small. I can't remember what it was called, but it was kind of a pain. One of my great memories from running the offset press, specifically for the family chronology file, was, you'd come home from school, and I was getting pretty good money because my dad paid me pretty well. And I'm running the press. I got my, ink apron on, so I'm not getting ink on my new school clothes. It's the fall. All these great projects happen in the fall, like this one. The press is going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I've just dialed it in, and I used to have a case or a stash of mug old-fashioned root beer, and it came in these glass bottles, and man, did it taste good in those glass bottles. And I would just drink my root beer and run my offset press, and that was my after-school job. Let me tell you, that was a good memory. The other kind of printing they had, which was, we used movable type, and it's a lithograph. This kind of printing was invented by Gutenberg in 1450. And there I am, 1979, 78, 1980, 79, 80, somewhere around there, doing the same thing. What it was is you'd have these trays of all these letters, and you would and they're all backwards, right? Because you'd have to, when you put them up, they'd have to come back. There was a frame, and how did this work? You had this little device. It was kind of L-shaped, and you would just pick up the movable type from the tray, A, B, C, whatever. You wouldn't just do the alphabet, but you'd like, what's the word you could like? Lithograph, L, I, T. When you had them all already, you would kind of screw them together, and there was this frame that you would put them in, and then you'd put them in, and then you had all these little wood shims that you would put around this, whatever it was that you were putting in there. You'd put that into the printer. There was a big plate right here that had ink on it, and the ink roller would come down, and it would catch the ink, and then it would roll it over your movable type, and then you had the piece of paper right here, and it would press up into it, and boom, you get a little business card like that would say lithograph. Mostly we did it for business cards because I was not fast at it. My dad didn't like to do it because it was tricky. Getting that thing lined up, and you'd put, nope, that doesn't work, and you'd adjust a little bit more. Nope, that doesn't work. Took a precise eye. And then he's like, well, we got this printing press here, and we're doing these family chronology files. Why don't we just open up a business? We'll call it McDowell Printing, and we can just print whatever people want. And this is out of our house, right? This is out of basically our spare garage. We weren't making computers out of our spare garage. We're going back to 1450 technology, thinking, yeah, this is the wave of the future. Printing. Anyway, that's what we did. So then we opened up a business, we put up a sign, boom, open for business. Here we go. And we're getting customers. And Bob liked to make up phony orders and take them in that were really difficult. Like we needed to print up 10,000 balloons. And we don't know how to print balloons. So my dad would come home after work, he was a school teacher, and he'd see this order for like 5,000 balloons. And he's like, what, Bob, we can't do balloons. What? I thought we could do it. We already paid us. And he'd get my dad, just wind them all up. And he'd start laughing. Printing humor. And again, I mentioned people go into their garages and they make computers and they make Hewlett Packard, and we're like, let's get some technology from the 1400s and see what that'll do. And it's getting kind of busy. We're starting to get some orders, right? And then Jack takes over. I think Bob goes off to school. We're starting to get some orders. So, what if we moved downtown? So we moved the shop out of our old garage and we moved it downtown Gridley. And it was like the floodgates opened. Suddenly people are coming out of the woodwork like, oh yeah, I need this printed, and oh, I need this printed. Yeah, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, something like that. Small town. Who knew that there would be such a market for printing? But there was. Floodgates open. Jack takes over the business, and he's printing. I would come in occasionally. At this point, the presses got a little bit more sophisticated, and I don't know what I was doing with the presses anymore. So I was like, they're cutting paper, fold stuff, or I'd stuff envelopes. I remember one time we had to stuff a bunch of envelopes, and so I had a bunch of my friends from high school, and it seemed like we stuffed envelopes for like 2 weeks. I think we would even write, sometimes we did this as a joke, we would write on the things that were going out in this mass mailing, like, help, I'm being held hostage in a sweatshop. I'm just a teenager. That was a growing concern, and he did that for many years. That particular shop ended up burning up because the landlord wanted the insurance money, and so he burned up the entire building. Thanks. All his printers, all the paper, lots of photographs, family photographs. So thank you, Mr. Arson Landlord. Never convicted. It went to trial, but he wasn't convicted. I don't know how they didn't convict him. They should have convicted him. So he ended up setting up in an old bank building. But then everybody, everyone needed something. You needed business cards. You needed, a family newsletter, family newsletters. We would print those off. Nobody had copiers. Nobody had a fax machine. Nobody had printing. Now, everyone's got a printer. I've got, I think in our house right now, I've got 4 printers. You got one for photographs. I think I've got printers that I gave to people for Christmas presents that they've never even opened, to print something. Printers are up the wazoo. Everybody likes to print. And my mom continued in her inventive ways, and she invented this thing called an easy planner for school teachers. So you could plan out the whole year. And she planned this thing out, and it was, you would fold it all up and it would fit into a binder, or you could stretch it out to be about 8 feet long. Well, we couldn't print that, so now we do have to get someone else to print it. I didn't talk about the dark room. A big timer on the wall. What was that? Where was I? So my mom finally invents this thing that's too big for my dad to print. We order a lot because, again, it's all in the setup. If you're going to order some, you order a lot. So we ordered a lot. I don't think we realized how many of them we ordered. And so my brother Bob and I were at home, and it was a summer afternoon. I think we're swimming or something like that. I think we'd been swimming, and now we're watching like Creature Feature on TV. We're just goofing off, man. It's a nice summer day in Northern California. We get this knock on the door, and we answer the door, and there's this guy, and I want to say he's like smoking a cigar, but he's not. I don't know, maybe he was. But he's got, he's a truck driver. Full-on truck driver, bulbous nose, jowly, heavy. And he goes, yeah, I got the order for the something, plant from the printing thing. And we're like, what? That order came in. Yeah, okay. And you got to imagine, this is the house that I talked about earlier where 4 cars would go down a day. This was a residential area. And this is just our house. And he looks around and he goes, you guys got a forklift for this? And we're like, a forklift? Yeah. Yeah, let me just pull out our forklift that we've got here in the back. We usually have a forklift right next to the bikes. Let me just move the bikes and pull the forklift out. We don't have a forklift. He just gets this look on his face. We're like, well, what are you going to do? We're like, well, what do you mean? And he doesn't say anything. He just kind of turns and motions for us to follow him. So we follow him. He's in a semi-truck. And he opens up the back of the semi-truck. And half of a semi-truck is full of these easy planners. And they're all in like 6-foot lengths. And we look at that and we're just like, what are we going to do? So we called up people and we did a big train and moved that stuff into like every nook and cranny of our house. And then for years, literally for years afterwards, we had these big, big mountains of paper. That was my job as a printer. And I'll leave you with this final thought is one of my great memories was me listening to live talking heads recorded over the radio on my cassette tape from the King Biscuit Flour Hour. They're doing some sort of live concert, and I'm listening to the talking heads, and I'm using technology from the 1400s to make the grad cards for one of the prettiest girls in school. And I'm just like, this is pretty awesome. I'm using this technology from the 1400s, technology that changed the world, to make grad cards. So that's job number 4, printer. Thanks for visiting. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, have a subscription. Click on a button here. I don't know. Tell your friends. It's good to have you. My mom and her inventions. At least I come by it naturally. I wasn't the inventor, though. It's my brothers that got the inventor gene. I got the let's lift it off of a truck without a forklift gene.